Year 3, Mrs Nicholson here to read you the next chapter of Kid Normal. It's chapter 20 and that's called Flight of the Super Zeros. I am the Blue Phantom, said the voice behind them. The 5 friends spun around on the spot with their mouths open, a display that would have earned them perfect marks if synchronised surprise was an event in the Olympics. Standing behind them was a slender figure in blue armour, casting a huge, dramatic shadow back over the deserted and, in places, still smoking playing fields. The figure reached up and removed a sleek blue helmet, revealing the beaming face and fluffing hair of Flora, the head teacher's secretary. "Hadn't figured that one out, had you?" she asked them delightedly. Murph rolled his eyes. His day could not get any weirder, but as he'd learnt by now, sometimes it's best just to go with the flow. So he did. "You're the legendary Blue Phantom?" he asked. "Oh, I don't know about legendary," replied Flora modestly. "Who are you then?" said Mary, turning to Carl, who had reopened his door and was staring at Flora with his brows raised. "Yeah," added Murphy. "Why is there a photo of you and Captain Alpha in your shed? Are you a hero too? What's your cape?" Hilda wanted to know. "I don't have a cape," replied Carl gruffly. "I was the only one here without one, until Kid Normal came along. But the Blue Phantom wouldn't have got very far without him," added Flora kindly. "Who do you think built my car and invented all my armour? And who do you think designed that halo until they're still using, hey?" "What, the thing that looks like a mobile phone?" asked Murph. Carl and Flora both laughed. "That unit was around a long time before mobiles," she told him. "So you're what, her sidekick?" asked Hilda. "Yeah, if you like," sidekick said Carl, not sounding as if he was too keen on the word. "I prefer husband, but yeah, sidekick if you like." He turned and disappeared back into his workshop, calling over his shoulder to Flora as he did so. "What do you want to do with this lot then?" "We could do with all the help we can get on this one, I reckon," she replied. Carl didn't answer, but they could hear rattling noises and a door creaking. The Super Zeros turned back to the Blue Phantom. "So, you used to swoop in and save the day when all hope was lost?" asked Hilda. "Well, yes, that was the general idea," replied Flora. Are you still able to do that?" inquired Billy hopefully. "Well, it's been quite a while, dear. The world has changed. You can't go saving people these days without someone shoving a camera in your face. Back in the old days, I just used to track down the bad guy, kick them in the face. Nowadays, you're a scandal on the news. Oh, and the risk assessments you have to do." "I haven't got time for risk assessments. I'm the Blue Phantom," Flora pointed out, "not the regional manager of a shoe shop." Murph wondered if this was the real reason that nobody had seen the Blue Phantom for so long, but there wasn't time for that right now. He stepped forward. "Well, I haven't got a camera phone. My mum won't let me, but we do need to save our school, and you know what? Only the Blue Phantom can help us now." In the background, Carl dropped an oil can, as if to punctuate Murph's movie-like declaration. It added drama of the moment and gave Murph and the rest of the gang a little shiver down their spines. "Well, I could never say no to that line," smiled Flora. "Come on then," she called through the open shed door to Carl. "Fire her up." "Fire what up?" said Murph. "You don't mean—" He was interrupted by the whine of jet engines from the larger building to the side of Carl's workshop. The double doors had always been locked tight, shuddered, and then burst open. A plume of smoke and dust billowed out, and when it cleared, a bullet-shaped silvery blue object emerged. With a deep purr from the engines, the Blue Phantom car rolled out gracefully into the afternoon light, its 4 enormous black tyres hissing as they ate up the tarmac in front of them, and the jet engines making a haze in the still air. "We call her the Banshee," said the Blue Phantom proudly, "and she's not taken us on a mission in 35 years. Nothing to worry about, though. Just means she's well rested, eh, Carl?" They all looked inside the Banshee to see Carl in the cockpit chuckling to himself. "She's been well looked after, dearest," he added happily. "You mean this has been in that shed the whole time I've been sweeping up leaves right next to the world's coolest car, and you didn't even think to say something?" spluttered Murph. "Well, those leaves weren't going to tidy themselves, and I needed to keep you focused. You had to Live up to your name. Isn't that right, Captain Brush? Carl gave a wheezy chuckle. And incidentally, this school isn't going to save itself either. So we can all stand around here chatting like old hens, or we can jump into the Banshee and save the day. And here's a picture of the Banshee. Everyone was a big fan of the second option by this stage and began to work out how to get in. The front seat was Flora's spot. It seemed only right considering it was her car, and she was in there like a flash, or more accurately, a phantom. A quick double somersault, a forward dive, and she was ready to go. Mightily impressive it was too. Pilates, she explains, keeps you wonderfully supple. The Banshee didn't have much way in the way of back chairs, but there was an area behind the twin pilots' chairs where Murph and the 4 other Super Zeros squashed themselves in. The inside of the jet car smelt of leather and oil. The floor was metal. In front of them, Carl was flicking switches on a wide control panel that was covered with exciting coloured lights. With a hiss of hydraulics, the door closed, sealing them all inside the shiny capsule. "Off we go then," cried Flora chirpily. "That's it," blurted Murph. "What do you mean, dear?" asked Flora, turning around. "Well, haven't you got a really cool catchphrase for when you launch your jet-powered car?" "Yeah," piped up Billy. "Well, what do you suggest, Billy?" asked Flora. "Oh, I don't know," he panicked. He hadn't thought of an alternative. Something like, "Banshee go-go!" Everyone laughed. Billy's head swelled with embarrassment. "Let's stick with 'off we go' then," decided Murph. "Right, hold on." Flora turned back to Carl and said matter-of-factly, "Off we go then." There was a clunk, a whiz and a ping, which was mildly exciting. Then suddenly a humongous roar, which was very exciting indeed. They were all pressed down into the floor as the Banshee shot into the sky. "Ribbon robotics, you said, Murph," shouted Carl over the noise of the jets. "That's over the other side of town, I know it. Doesn't look like great conditions for us, though," he muttered, consulting the instrument panel in front of him. "I don't know what you're talking about," piped up Hilda. "It's turning into a lovely evening, perfect for a picnic or a little horsey ride or, flying around in a jet car." "Not in a secret jet car, though," Carl told her. "Everyone in town is going to see us. We need to find cover." "I can help," said a muffled voice from underneath Murph's leg. It wasn't a voice he recognised. Shock, he realised that it had come from a very squashed Nellie. Nellie muscled her way out from under the aforementioned Murph's leg, or leg of Murph, and squeezed herself in between Flora and Carl at the front of the cockpit. Then she screwed her face up in absolute concentration. Almost immediately, a thin layer of white cloud began to appear below the hovering Banshee, spreading out like ripples in a pond to cover the whole town. "Wonderful work, dear," explained Flora. "Is this the first time you've used your cape in a real situation?" "Yes, Your Majesty," panicked Nellie. Flora laughed kindly and ruffled her hair. "Well, you've done remarkably well. Thank you." Carl reached over to the control panel and pulled a lever. They heard a whirring noise as the jet engines rotated and the Banshee shot forward across the sheet of concealing cloud. Mary wanted some in-flight information. "So, if you're the Blue Phantom," she began. "I think we covered that," murmured Murph. Mary shushed him. "Then who runs the school, you or Mr. Superman?" "Well," Flora considered this question, "you all set it up together, really. Geoffrey looks after day-to-day matters, but I certainly keep an eye on things. After all, Murph, who do you think suggested to him that you should stay at the school?" "Why? Why did you want me to stay?" Murph asked. "Oh, well, I've always had a soft spot for the boy without a cape, said Flora, reaching over and squeezing Carl's hand. "And you looked so miserable sitting there that day, poor little mite. Anyway," she peered out the windscreen, "it's here, isn't it, dear?" "Oh, don't start all that again. It's one thing I haven't missed in the last 30 years, grumbled Carl. "I know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm going. Leave me alone." "All I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with stopping to ask for directions every once in a while," said Flora. "Look, I got lost once when we were combating the mongoose in 1974, and even then asking for directions was more trouble than it was worth. Remember trying to explain that one away? Oh, sorry, officer. Do you know where we can find the mongoose? Me and my wife, the Blue Phantom, seem to have got lost in our flying jet car. Anyway, look, I'm not going to get lost." Carl pointed to a screen in the centre of the main panel in front of him. Sat-nav, he declared proudly. I've made a lot of special modifications myself. And he gave them all a little wink. Can we stop for a wee-wee, please? Asked Billy. Save the world first, wee later, replied Flora. Page 1 of the Secret Agent's Handbook. If you must know, I remember someone telling me that once. Anyway, do you think it's time to have a quick run-through of your plan? We'll be there in a couple of minutes. So it says so here on Carl's newfandangled sat-nav. Plan, said Mirth, Hilda, Mary, Billy and even Nellie. We were kind of hoping that you'd be able to help us with that, Mary added, embarrassed. Well, said Flora, this nectar sounds like a nasty piece of work, and he's got some of the world's most powerful weaponry I've ever heard of. But what I think I'd do, and before she could impact her wisdom, there was a huge bang and a sudden rushing of wind. As the glass beside her shattered, a bullet had pinged across the metal cabin, denting the wall behind them. Outside the window was the hovering yellow and black shape of one of Nectar's attack drones. Flora didn't seem unduly worried. We've got company, Carl, she said calmly. This was always my favourite bit, grinned Carl, and he jerked his control wheel sharply to the right. Hang on, he shouted as he pulled the Banshee into a side slip, leaving the drone behind as they dropped towards the thin cloud layer still shimmering below them. Your destination is in 300 metres, intoned a calm lady's voice from the sat-nav. But up ahead, they could make out the shape of a second attack drone hovering just above the cloud and moving rapidly towards them. Tiny sparks appeared on each side of it, and with horror, Mirth realised that it was opening fire. Bullets pinged off the Banshee's windscreen. Oh, I said you should have made the side windows bulletproof as well, said Flora. Now, said Carl through gritted teeth, pulling back on the controls and sending the vehicle spiralling upwards and out of range. It's not the time for feedback, but thank you, dear, it's been noted, and if we survive this, I'll certainly look into it. He pushed on to another lever to his right, and the engines increased in pitch. Let's see if we can outrun them, eh? At least, the Banshee shot forward. Your destination is in 200 metres, the sat-nav informed everyone. Hilda had her nose pressed to the window at the back of the cabin. I can see them. They're dropping behind, she sounded excitedly. I think we're going to make it. How many of those big drones were there at the school? Asked Murphy. 4, replied Mary. We got rid of one at your house. Then there are 2 more back there. That makes 3. So, your destination is within 100 metres. Carl, there's another one, yelled Mirth over the scream of the jets. Carl turned his head. What? There's another. Look out! The 4th drone had broken the cloud cover just ahead and was flying straight towards them at full speed. Flora turned to Carl, suddenly looking deadly serious. Get these kids down safely, she urged him. Carl looked back at her. Don't worry, I will, he told her. Never again, remember? Flora nodded and vanished in a flash. Within seconds, the drone was just metres away, aiming its machine guns at them through the broken side window. But before it could fire, it suddenly lurched backwards, bullets streaming harmlessly over the Banshee's roof. Mirth could just make out a bluish shimmer on its rear. Flora was straddling the drone's back. An invisible pensioner rising a giant robot wasp, Mirth thought to himself. That's not something you see every day. The Banshee moved slightly to one side as the blue phantom grabbed onto the swinging passenger door, holding the attack drone tightly with its guns pointing upwards so it couldn't fire at them. Carl, bring us down so I can finish this thing off. They heard her yell over the scream of the engines. Carl moved a lever to rotate the jets and bring the Banshee lower. But as they moved, the attack drone was sucked through the intake of the left-hand jet engine. The engine spluttered and sparked, giving out a cloud of smoke and flame. The Banshee veered sickeningly to one side and began to lose height. Flora was nowhere to be seen. We're going down, shouted Carl unnecessarily. We're getting ready to bail, Mary. You got that brolly, Flora? Where are you? He touched a button in front of him, and with a whine of motors, a hatch behind them began to open. Outside they could see nothing but Nellie's layer of cloud rusting past. We need to shift some weight, Carl yelled. Mary, get that brolly up and get everyone to the ground. What about you? Screamed Mary as she looked at the umbrella, willing to be okay again, since it was used to see off the first attack drone. We'll be fine. This is your first time being shot down, am I right? Yes, oddly enough it is, she replied. Well, this is our 100th. I've told you, we'll be fine. We're tough old things. Get yourselves down there and get saving. Then Mirth heard Carl mutter to himself. 100 crash landings, eh? Do we get a letter from the Queen? Flora's voice came from the roof. I imagine we'll get one from the insurance company, and Carl smiled with relief that she was alive. But then there was another huge bang as the left-hand engine exploded. Smoke began to fill the cockpit. Jump! Carl ordered the 5 Super Zeros. Now! The last thing they heard before they leaped into white nothingness, holding Mara's umbrella handle for dear life, was the sat-nav saying, You have reached your destination. You have reached your destination. A few moments later, there was an enormous crash and an explosion from somewhere way to the right. Cool. Full of suspense. I wonder if they're able to save the day and stop the evil wasps. Thanks for listening.